This was the Elden Ring Nightreign trailer. I didn't get to see this. It's just a pre-order trailer. I'm pretty sure it's everything we've seen, though.
Seekers of redemption, you were chosen.
Man, this looks so good, bro. What is that? New weapon type.
Band together and prepare to claim the life of the Night Lord.
Okay, that's the pre-order trailer. I guess most of that was stuff we've seen before, so it's not a big deal. May 30th. It comes out on May 30th, 2025. That is so soon, bro. But yeah, like I said, people did get to play the beta test or the network test. And I feel like, okay, they're doing something a little different with the game. It's $40, but it's almost the way I can think of it. Now, don't hate me for this, but it seems like it's almost like a Fortnite-esque Souls-like game, basically. That's what it seems like. But I watched this guy's video, so here we go. I did also, peek. I peeked a little bit at it, which is why I want to watch it, because this guy did a good descriptive thing about it. I didn't watch the whole thing, but this is his experience from playing it. So
recently, I got the chance to play Elden Ring Nightreign early at a hands-on preview event hosted in Vegas. In case you missed it, Nightreign is the next game From Software is releasing, and according to them, it's a quote, co-op action survival game. What is it really? It's essentially Elden Ring remixed into an action roguelike for 3 players, where each run sees you fighting enemies and collecting loot in a shrinking Fortnite-esque circle. When the circle fully shrinks, you're forced into a nighttime boss fight. The game has you fighting Elden Ring enemies and bosses, but you'll also encounter bosses from past Dark Souls games occasionally too, like the Nameless King.
By the way, this is supposedly the Nameless King, right, from Dark Souls 3. I still have never seen that boss in the game. Like, to this day, still. And I beat Dark Souls 3, so I must have missed it. Unless it was DLC, which I don't know if I even had. But I never got to experience this fight at all. So to me, this is almost like a completely new mob or boss, I suppose. But the way I almost think about Nightreign, from what I know, is that it basically just seems like almost, not necessarily a battle royale, but it's similar in the sense that you drop down into the map, you collect loot and everything like that, and then you fight the bosses. While the circle or the storm closes in on you. So I don't know. We'll find out. A shame you missed it. Is it DLC? Because I don't know. Like I said, I don't know if I even had DLC on the game that I played. Might have been base game, but I didn't stream it, so.
If you make it to day 3, you get to fight one of the 8 Night Lord final bosses, and winning here equals a successful run. I was unfortunately not allowed to record my own footage at the event, but I was given 17 minutes of B-roll showcasing a good chunk of the experience. Now, I do have a lot of opinions about my time playing the game, but first let's go over all the footage in sequential
game. You get 5 big booms. Yo, your obsession with 9/11 memes are crazy, bro. I'm just saying.
Order, as I think it paints a pretty clear picture of what to expect from the gameplay loop. I'll interject with my thoughts along the way, and save some of my bigger opinions and critiques for the end. Each run begins with a short cutscene of your chosen Nightfarers walking toward a cliff before running to catch a lift from a spectral hawk. There will be 8 characters to choose from in the full game, but there are only 4 in the demo, and I'll talk about what each one can do as they appear. Next, you're thrust into the game with an aerial view of the map.
See, this is what, okay, so don't hate me for this, but again, this reminds me of every battle royale game that you play, whether it's Apex Legends or Fortnite or something like that, where you're just like hanging from, I don't know, the battle bus or whatever, and you drop down into the map.
You glide down on your hawk.
That's essentially what's happening here, let's be real.
Though you don't have control over where you get to land. The game forces you to drop off in the spot it's chosen near the edge of the map. It's pretty odd that you can't choose where to land or influence the flight of the bird, because I think it'd be pretty fun to have more agency over where to start. But hey, that's just me. Also, the text Day 1 pops up on the screen because, you guessed it, it's Day 1. As I already mentioned, the game is split into 3
Dark
days.
Souls 4.
You explore during the day and fight a boss at night.
We need Elden
Each day
Ring
is
2.
somewhere between 10 to 15 minutes long. I didn't time it, but I'm pretty sure it's within that range. Upon landing, you have a few different choices on where to go, but these players chose to go after the nearest enemy camp. something my group often did as well. This also gives us our first look at Wilder, the strength dexterity knight, and his grapple hook ability. As you can see, it pulls
that
small
grapple hook
enemies
is clean.
closer, but when used on larger ones, Wilder's launch toward them instead. Each character has one unique ability like this that's on a short cooldown. There's normally a big icon at the bottom of the screen that displays the ability and lets you know when it's available to use. Also, this is pointing out the obvious, but it's worth mentioning. This combat is literally Elden Ring. Like the animations, the enemies you're fighting, this is Elden Ring. Ultimately, this makes Nightreign feel like an ambitious fan mod for Elden Ring as opposed to a standalone product. And I don't mean that necessarily as a bad thing, but I do feel compelled to point this out because it's pretty core to the experience. After clearing the camp, the group runs toward the nearest site of grace. This showcases the new super sprint, which is basically the normal sprint at double speed. This is mostly used for traversal because the map is big and Torrent's on vacation. You can also use it during combat, but it's tough to pull off because it'll drain your entire stamina bar almost instantly.
So from what I get from this, by the way, is it almost seems like, I know you can do this solo, but it really seems like it's just tailor-made for co-op. Just, that's it. Tailor-made for co-op. And like I said, I know you can do it with NPCs, I believe, the runs and the playthroughs, but I'm not sure. There's still so many questions about this game. And to be fair, I haven't seen any other footage than what I'm watching right now. So I'm sure my questions will be answered later in the video, but it feels like I don't know exactly how the game will go. Like because it's a different approach than a traditional Souls game, it almost feels like, well, it's not even that it feels like, they are trying something new with this. So I don't know. I feel like the success is going to be really dependent. And the biggest question is, will this get old fast? That's the biggest thing, because I can definitely see that happening. Like, I'm not sure if, well, I don't know the longevity of the game, so I don't know how it's going to run. But I guess we'll find out more about it.
Anyway, they run up to the site of grace to replenish their healing flask and level up. You start each run with 3 flasks, and each site of grace will refill them all. Sites of Grace are also where you can level up using the runes you acquire from enemies and bosses, just like Elden Ring. However, unlike Elden Ring, there isn't a way to pick and choose stats.
Do you think it'll get old
Instead,
fast?
you just click the big level up button, and you'll simply be stronger with extra damage.
I'll give it, yeah, I mean, I kind of agree, but I'll give it benefit of the doubt until I finish at least the video, so we'll see.
And FP. I'm a little mixed on this, as I think it's a missed opportunity to provide the player with a choice on how to build their character, but it does fit the theme of the game with them wanting to keep things quick and streamlined. So maybe it's for the best. Regardless, leveling up is important as the boost in damage from level 1 to level 2 is quite noticeable. More damage means enemies die faster, and in this game, speed is everything. Next, we see the player attack a group of demi-humans, and they do this by throwing a firebomb. So yes, consumables such as firebombs are a thing in Nightreign, and you begin each run with 4 inventory slots to hold different types of consumables. You can also see that the player broke some glowing crates, which dropped additional consumables for them to pick up. Between your inventory being very limited and finding plenty of extra consumables,
each slot can't hold large stacks. For example, 2 firebombs take up a whole slot, so if you wanted to hold 2 more, it would take up another slot. Okay.
You're heavily encouraged to use these whenever you have a chance. After this, the group encounters a golem, and I believe it counts as a mini-boss. Mini-bosses are scattered across the map, and you'll know you're fighting one because a boss health bar will appear at the bottom of the screen. Upon defeat, the mini-boss will drop a purple soul, and this rewards each player with the choice between 3 upgrades, ranging from a new weapon to a permanent passive boost. Examples of the passives I saw were a slight increase to stamina regen, or a slight increase to damage reduction. And to be clear, all 3 players get their own reward from the 1 purple soul. This next clip showcases the new wall climbing mechanic. When you press jump while sprinting toward a wall, your character will automatically run up the wall and then mantle over the ledge. This is sick. It adds an additional layer of verticality to the map. It can be fun figuring out how to get from point A to point B, since sometimes you have to use the wall climb in slightly creative ways. At the top of this church, the player finds some loot on a body and inside a box.
Okay, that wall climb would only ever happen because of the type of game that this is. If it was a traditional Souls game, like, you know, Dark Souls, Elden Ring, regular, they would never add that mechanic in there, because then it makes, what's the point of exploring or hidden paths to get to a certain area that you can't normally reach without, you know, a ladder or some shit like that. Like, paths like that will kind of be kind of useless if you're able to do this in a regular game, but that's just for this game, I feel like. I don't know.
Note is that all loot you...
Also, I'm not sure about the map. The map, from what I saw in the trailer, almost seemed like the regular map in Elden Ring, but it does seem like there's some new stuff around here, so not sure if how much they redid or if it's completely new. I don't know the balance between that.
Find like this is classified as community loot, meaning that every member of the team can see it, but only one person can take each item. This is also our first look at the different armaments you can find. Each weapon and shield has a built-in Ash of War, and each spellcasting catalyst has 2 different spells. So yes, in this game, the spells you cast are attached directly to the catalyst. Each armament also comes with a built-in passive effect, such as extra damage on combo finishers, additional item discovery, or HP restoration upon attacks. These are mostly small background bonuses, but what's interesting is that each of these passive effects applies to your character even if the armament isn't actively being used. As long as it's equipped, you get the effect. This means that you always want to have 6 armaments equipped, especially because equip load isn't something you need to worry about in this game. You'll always be fast rolling. This is also our first look at blue colored loot. This indicates that it's more rare, and the rarity goes from white to blue to purple to orange. Next, we catch a glimpse of the map screen, and this should give you a better idea of the scope of each run. The map itself is an island.
Okay, it is a bit
edge,
different.
You can see the Fortnite circle closing in.
Oh,
Just like
yeah.
Fortnite,
There it is.
instead of constantly getting smaller, there are intervals where it doesn't move at all. I won't go over all the icons on the map, but basically, these show you where most of the points of interest are, like enemy camps or fortresses. You can then pin on the map where you want to go, which is useful because the other players will be able to see your pin and know where you're going. Also worth noting is that some things are hidden on the map, so it's possible you'll find something good even if it's not marked from the start. Between this and the marked points of interest, you probably won't have time to do everything, so you have to make quick decisions on where to go and what to skip. Next, we see Wilder use his grapple hook to get a little extra speed when running around. It's tough to see here, but this use case is also relevant during fights. Instead of grappling the boss, it might be worth grappling the ground to reposition. We then see...
I mean, in this instance, the rarities and equipment... Okay, let's be real. It is kind of like, you know, Fortnite, basically. And in this case... Yeah, I mean, come on, they have a circle and closing in on you. You have to loot. There's rarities in your equipment. And then I guess your goal is to defeat like a certain type of boss towards the end. I'm not sure how you like qualify a successful run, but yeah, I don't know. I'm really not sure. This like I don't know, like it is a cool like I like the FromSoft games, but like I said, it makes me really question the longevity of the game. I'm not like I don't know how to feel about it, and I was not able to play the network beta test either, so I really don't know how it plays, nor have I seen any footage of it. But I guess we're watching it right now.
See Wilder take on another mini-boss, the Leonine Misbegotten, and he initiates the fight with a big fire explosion. This is Wilder's ultimate ability, so unlike the grapple hook, which is on a short cooldown, it's usually a minute or two between uses of the ultimate, and I believe dealing damage increases the speed it fills up. Wilder then lands a critical hit, and this is a good time to point out that some of the weapon animations have been changed. So the Greatsword moveset, for example, is a bit different. It feels a little faster and more aggressive, which is well suited for the faster pace of Nightreign.
That's fair.
This fight also gives us a look at Wilder's unique passive ability, something each character has. Once per run, you can cheat death. The first time you get hit by an attack that would kill you, there's a flash of white followed by a quick dodge. The first time it happened, I thought it was some sort of perfect block, but no, it's Wilder surviving an attack he shouldn't have. Finally, Wilder's group shows up. But oh no,
I like the concept of it. I do think that it has potential to be really creative. Like if anyone's played Risk of Rain, I'm not comparing the two games because they're different, but in terms of like how they scale, like how the bosses scale, or even how the players scale, I feel like is kind of similar. And I do think it has room or potential to be very interesting and fun. But then it comes back to the longevity. And for $40, is it worth the price point? That's the biggest question too.
So in Nightreign, instead of dying immediately, you enter a down state where you can crawl around. Not to keep bringing up Fortnite, but it's like Fortnite.
There you go.
Unlike Fortnite, to revive your teammate, you actually
Fortnite.
want to attack them. After dealing enough damage, they pop right back up.
Risk of Rain is a good game. I played
like
two.
This in game. A ring split into
Really
3
fun.
equal sections.
Really liked it a lot.
This ring represents how much damage you need to deal to bring your friend back. The first time they go down, only one section needs to be depleted, but each subsequent death adds another section, so it gets tougher and tougher to keep reviving. I think this may reset if you don't get down for a while though. You have 15 seconds to get revived, and if your friends fail to get you, you'll lose a level and respawn at the last site of grace you touched. This won't end a run, but it's still a pretty brutal punishment.
You lose levels for dying? Really?
Next, we have some footage of another Nightfarer, the Guardian. This bird person is the tank of the cast, with the most HP and a more defensive playstyle. Their active ability is a whirlwind that knocks small enemies up and staggers big enemies. They also have a special defensive stance they can enter, which seems to significantly decrease the stamina you lose when blocking attacks. This stance is their unique passive trait though, and not an ability on cooldown, so you can use it use it whenever you want. Most importantly though, they have a sick-ass dive bomb ultimate that lets them crash down for massive damage. This also showcases one of the best things about the revive mechanic. You can simultaneously hit enemies while reviving your teammates.
Oh, that's
and the
cool.
dive bomb is probably the
that.
best example of
That's
why that's useful. They don't show it here, but if you keep holding down the ultimate button after landing your dive bomb, you remain crouched down with your weapon in the ground. And this provides a defensive buff to yourself and nearby allies for up to 10 seconds if you keep holding it.
Well, that's
I also
convenient.
think you're immune to staggers and take heavily reduced damage while holding this stance. The next clip shows off the Fortnite circle.
See, I'm also curious about the difficulty of the game too. How difficult, bro? This section is literally labeled the Fortnite circle. I'm curious about how difficult the game will be in a game that's predicated off of survive with the loot that you have and then beat the boss towards the end of the day. Like, what is the difficulty scaling going to be on that? That's the question as well.
It takes the form of a blue ring of fire. If you find yourself outside the circle, you slowly take damage over time. Believe it or not, as much as everyone, myself included, keeps joking about the Fortnite comparisons, I think the time pressure this circle adds is one of the more compelling parts of the gameplay loop. Basically, it encourages you to play efficiently. You don't just want to clear the camp full of enemies, you want to do it fast. And then it makes the moments in between fights interesting too, because you gotta make quick decisions on where to go and how to get there. This is fun, and pretty distinct from playing Elden Ring. Speaking of how to get places, one way to do that is by making use of slipstreams. These function pretty much identically to Spirit Springs in Elden Ring, and they allow you to super jump into the air.
I like the
These were fun
sky.
in Elden Ring, and they're still fun here. And it's cool how you can sometimes use them to reach the top of structures they might not have been intended for. Up ahead, the group finds a Church of America, and if you collect the item inside, it upgrades the maximum usage of your healing flask by 1. Every church like this will have this upgrade, so you can always plan ahead and stop at 1. Next, the group finds a scarab to kill. This is an example of one of the many useful things you can find that might not be marked on the map. These guys always drop a talisman you can equip, and these talismans seem to function identically to how they do in Elden Ring. The passive boost they give can sometimes be substantial. We then have some more camp clearing gameplay, though these enemies are tougher than the ones at the start. This clip also gives us a better look at the Guardian's whirlwind move and how it can knock enemies off.
Yo, that's
One
kinda
significant
sick.
change from Elden Ring is how enemies no longer get periods of invincibility when knocked down, and this is especially useful for moves like the whirlwind attack if your teammates follow up. Also, notice how the magic swords of Carrie and
That
Phalanx
seems so
appear over
broken.
Wilder's head without him casting a spell. I believe this is an example
You
of
could
a
just
passive
spam
upgrade
moves,
he got
'cause
from
you have
a mini-boss.
teammates, so-
The way this one works is that every 30 seconds or so, these swords will appear over your head for free damage. Next, we get another grapple shot clip. And yes, it can be used to break the
Oh,
guard of an
that's
enemy
sick.
using a shield. The group then finds an underground passage leading to a treasure room, and this gives us another look at the loot system. Once again, this is community loot, and the players must share. You can also see that there are level requirements attached to weapons. Blue is level 3, purple is level 9, and orange is level 12.
I don't know that
there
I
aren't
like
stat
that.
requirements like Elden Ring, and you just have one overall level. If you find a spectral tree, you can summon a spectral hawk to carry you across the map. These follow set paths, and the little floating spirits show you the general direction it'll take you. You can also see the path it'll take you on the map screen. What's cool about these spectral hawks, as opposed to the ones at the start of the match, is that you're given a little control in steering them, and when you want to land, you have more freedom on where exactly you want to touch down. This is also our first look at the third character, the Duchess. She's basically the nimble rogue archetype of the group. The players also find a treasure map on a desk in this fort, and this reveals the locations of more points of interest on the map. Also, this location is literally fort height from Elden Ring, like one-to-one copy-paste. Not every location is like this, but some of them are, and it's incredibly trippy seeing iconic areas like the Gatefront ruins dropped into this remixed version of Limgrave. I'm not too bothered by this, but this is another example of ripping things straight off Elden Ring, and it plays a big role in this feeling like a well-made fan mod as opposed to a standalone game. Next, we get some proper Duchess gameplay and a look at her ability, Restage. This replays the damage an enemy or boss just took over.
I feel like looking at all of this, I would think that because you're playing with like 2 other players, so it's 3 of you guys total, assumingly, that the bosses have to be more difficult now. Like, they already removed the mechanic where they take away the invincibility when the boss is knocked down or the enemy is knocked down, so you can actually quite literally just spam moves while they are down and trying to get up and stuck in the animation. But I feel like that would make it really easy, no? Like, that would make it a lot easier to fight and kill. Like, if they don't buff the boss or the enemies in some way, shape, or form, I don't know how. Like, it's really just a question of difficulty. Like, will you be able to beat it like just quickly, or are they gonna add like different effects? I know that there's passives now for each of the bosses that they have, but I don't know. It's not that I'm concerned about difficulty here, but at the same time, like, it is supposed to be a Souls game, whether it's in the same format or not. So I don't know. Ustard. What? Okay, bro. Yo, I swear, I just saw another mosquito. That's, dude, I got bit last night. I still get bit by mosquitoes. It's so crazy.
Over the past 2 seconds. And as you can see, it's especially impactful when it's paired with something like Wilder's ultimate. For only being on a short cooldown, this is easily the strongest ability in the game. It's also a great example of co-op synergy and interactivity that usually isn't present in other From Software games.
What is
this
that?
This clip also shows an important change to critical hits. In Elden Ring, bosses and enemies are immune to damage from teammates for the duration of someone landing a critical hit. But in Nightreign, that's no longer a restriction. However, I think bosses might take reduced damage from other hits during this
Wait, what? What did he say? Just kill him, bro. I'm not even playing.
Bosses and enemies are immune to damage from teammates for the duration of someone landing a critical hit. But in Nightreign, that's no longer a restriction.
Dude, that is so broken. They have to buff the bosses. They have to. You take away the invincibility, so when they're knocked down and they're in the animation of getting up, you can still attack the boss and still deal damage to it. When they are staggered and doing a critical hit, if you're doing a critical hit on them, they can still take damage from your teammates while you're getting the critical hit off. That has to be like, I don't know, they're like dumbing it down. I don't like that. Because that makes it so much easier to kill it then. You would think, no? I mean, I can't see the health bar on the boss here, but that's what he said. So, I mean, I feel like that's definitely a concern. And I don't think I'm the only one that shares that sentiment. Something that didn't need to be changed. Yeah, exactly. I mean, like I said, it's a Souls game, whether it's in the same format or not. So it should be at least a little bit more difficult than what it normally is. I just think taking away the iframes from that, and then, you know, the boss being liable to damage while taking a critical hit from you, that's kind of ridiculous, especially for a Souls game. I don't know. I mean, I get the aim of the game is to beat it quickly. So maybe I could see it possibly like going over my head here, but from my first impressions of hearing that, I don't like that. I don't like that.
However, I think bosses might take reduced damage from other hits during this window, so that's not too overpowered. One last thing to note about this clip, the Duchess's passive gives her a unique quick-step Bloodborne dodge that's noticeably faster than the other dodges. She also gets a cool little backflip if you dodge backwards twice. Check out this dagger moveset, by the way. This is much different than Elden Ring and way faster. Definitely a fan of this change, and I can vouch that it feels great to use. Next, we get to see the Duchess's ultimate, which applies invisibility to herself and the rest of the group.
Yo, they got ultimates in this game?
Sneaking up on enemies, but I also find it useful even in the middle of a boss fight, because attacking doesn't seem to break stealth.
Oh, that is sick.
But yeah, it has its uses. Finally, we get to see the fourth character, the Recluse, aka the Spellcaster Witch. Big fan of her design, by the way. And I already know this is going to be Zully's name. Like any good spellcaster, the first thing she does is jump off a cliff. And this demonstrates another cool change to Nightreign. No fall damage. The group then approaches an Everjail. To open it up, you'd find a stone sword key and then use it on the nearby stone imps. This then unlocks the boss fight. Next, we get a look at the Recluse's unique ability, Magic Cocktail. And it's probably the coolest ability in the game, but it's weirdly complicated, so buckle up for a long explanation. So when you hit an enemy with a spell, they get marked by the corresponding element. The 4 elements are magic, fire, lightning, and holy. And in this clip, the enemy gets marked with magic. Then, when you use her ability, it sucks out the elemental mark. In addition to restoring FP, this also fills in one of the 3 circles on the ability icon with the element you just sucked up. You repeat this 2 more times until all 3 circles are filled up, at which point using it a 4th time will expend the elemental icons and cast a special spell. Now here's the crazy part. The Magic Cocktail spell is unique and depends on the combination of elements you absorbed. So like, magic, magic, magic is different than magic, magic, fire is different than magic, fire, lightning. Since there are 4 different elements, this results in 14 different potential spells you can cast baked into just one ability. And you kind of have to remember them because they have different ranges and uses.
So complicated.
Hell, some of them don't even deal damage. Fire, Fire, Holy, for example, creates a healing aura for yourself and nearby teammates. But the fun doesn't end there. Not only can you suck elemental marks out of enemies from the spells you cast.
Yo, they made that way more complicated than they should have. That does not need to be that.
Here Wilder uses a fire attack on the boss. This applies the fire mark, and the Recluse is able to suck the fire right out. And guess what? The damage your teammates take also counts. So if a teammate gets hit by a fire attack, you can lock onto them and suck it out the same way you would for an enemy.
Imagine if you're a spellcaster and you're trying to like remember, like, man, what combination is it to heal my teammates or to have take reduced damage or something like that, and then you forget, you mess it up, and then they die. That's kind of crazy. I feel like they could have like limited the number of combinations that you take from that or that you apply to the enemy. Because I like trying to remember all that off the top of your head and in a real-time scenario, I feel like that's going to be like, you know, people will definitely make mistakes. And I think the like how difficult, not, I wouldn't say difficult, but I think the complexity of remembering all that stuff, or like utilizing the spellcaster like efficiently, would probably turn people off of that. I don't know. That's just my opinion, but um yeah, I mean, unless you want to like go hard and fucking study that shit like it's a history test, I guess.
Yeah, this kind of kicks ass, and it's super fun seeing a needlessly complex move put into a game like this. The Recluse also has a pretty useful ultimate. It's called Song of the Blood Soul, and it marks all nearby enemies with a blood icon. Hitting a marked
cool.
enemy will restore HP and FP.
I do like that.
Hit them too for the same effect.
The ult is
Lastly,
nice.
the Recluse has a unique dodge animation where she floats around. I like how elegant it is, and I feel like it perfectly fits her design. Next up, we see the group running through some mines, and shout out to FromSoft for sending us all this hand-picked footage, yet leaving in a T-posing miner. No hate, genuinely funny that slipped through. Anyway, yeah, you can find mines like this during runs, but when I was playing, I felt like these were too out of the way to be worth it given the time pressure. Plus, I didn't find anything super useful inside. Maybe they'll change though, or maybe I missed something. We then get a look at a camp full of flame chariots. When I was playing with my group, we made the mistake of heading to this camp at the very start. This is not a level 1 area. These guys are tough. If only there was a way to reach the weak spot on the top of their head. Oh wait, you can use the new wall climbing ability to jump up and hit it for free.
Oh, what?
I wish I was aware of this during my play session, but hey, now we both know. Next, we see the group take on a dragon boss fight. Not much to say here, as we've seen most of this stuff already, but pay attention to the time of day. As it slowly changes to nighttime, that's your cue that you should start wrapping up whatever you're doing, because the circle begins to rapidly shrink at this point. You can see the circle closing in as they finish off the dragon. From here, what you want to do is look for the floating golden tree in the sky, as that's the point where the circle will close in. Eventually, the ring of fire reaches its smallest size, and essentially forms an arena. This is where you'll fight the first major boss. Before the boss fight, a small group of enemies will spawn in. This serves as both a warm-up for the fight, and a teaser for which boss you're about to see. In this case, it's a pack of demi-humans, so fittingly, the boss fight is a demi-human queen and a demi-human swordsman. Something I appreciate about Nightreign is that these fights seem specifically designed for multiplayer, something we don't typically see in FromSoft games.
Yeah.
In this case, it's due to there being 2 bosses at once, but I also encountered other bosses that are better examples of this. One of those bosses was the Centipede Demon from Dark Souls 1. During the fight, you can chop off its centipede.
Wait.
One of those bosses.
The Centipede Demon. I don't even remember that, and I just played Dark Souls 1. What was that boss? What? The Centipede Demon? What? What was that one? Yo, Marquise, you remember that? I don't remember that boss. Like I said, I just fucking played it too, so. Is that like new, or I don't know? Is that DLC? The Centipede Demon. I don't remember that.
Bosses was the Centipede Demon.
The fire area? Oh! Yeah, I guess. Interesting. Yeah, okay.
From Dark Souls for multiplayer, something we don't typically see in FromSoft games. In this case, it's due to there being 2 bosses at once, but I also encountered other bosses that are better examples of this. One of those bosses was the Centipede Demon from Dark Souls 1. During the fight, you can chop off its centipede limbs, but this forms an additional hazard as the severed limb keeps fighting. This is perfect for a group battle. Also, in case you're curious, its moveset seemed to modify from Dark Souls, so it wasn't like FromSoft just ported the boss into Elden Ring without making changes. I don't know exactly what those changes were, but I could tell that it felt different than Dark Souls. Another modified nighttime boss we encountered was Morgott. He was mostly similar to his appearance in Elden Ring, but he had a few new moves, including this insane AoE blood slash that would hit the whole group and nearly one-shot us. He also had new dagger throwing combos, and just seemed more aggressive overall. If FromSoft is going to rely on reusing bosses, I appreciate that these changes make it feel new-ish and suited for co-op. It's a shame they didn't seem to make any meaningful changes to the demi-human boss fight, but oh well. Anyway, after completing the fight, you get the message Night Repulsed. The boss also drops a purple soul, and upon interacting with it, you get a choice between 3 different upgrades for your character. This is basically how it works when killing mini-bosses too, but the upgrade from this main boss is more substantial. Sometimes these upgrades operate purely in the background, like extra spell duration,
A2, A3.
but my group occasionally encountered some more interesting upgrades. One time,
I'm curious how long a run would be, like one run.
Whenever he dodged. Another one he found cast fireballs whenever he walked. And I do mean walked. Like, slightly tilting the left stick was the only way to trigger it. While the walking one wasn't super useful, both of these upgrades were cool because they weren't just background percentage buffs to stats. They were noticeable abilities that had the potential to shift our playstyle, at least a little bit. After everyone chooses an upgrade, fog rolls in and the Ring of Fire fully recedes. From there, Day 2 begins, and you get to continue exploring the map to get stronger before Night 2. Worth noting is that enemies and bosses defeated during Day 1 don't respawn, so it's a good idea to keep track of where you've already been. So yeah, the gameplay loop you've seen repeats for day 2, and if you survive the Night 2 boss, you're immediately taken to the Night Lord on day 3. As such, day 3 consists of just this boss fight with no exploration phase. You progress to day 3 by walking along a pathway to a door that reminds me a lot of the area and door at the end of Shadow of the Erdtree. The Night Lord of the demo was Gladius, a 3-headed dog monster that swings around a giant sword on a chain. This guy is no joke. Also, for those of you who haven't played all the Soulsborne games, this is in fact the first boss that's completely unique to Nightreign, and I suspect the other Night Lords will be completely new as well. This guy also has a pretty devastating grab attack, so I recommend not getting hit by it. During the fight, one of Wilder's teammates goes down.
Yo, that's like, do you remember, what was that wolf boss that I beat super easily? That's guarding the grave? It's like that, but like on crack, basically.
Ability to revive teammates with ranged weapons like bows. This is surprisingly useful, and it might be worth holding on to a ranged weapon just for situations like this. Speaking of ranged weapons, you don't have to worry about ammo in this game. It's unlimited. Around the halfway point, the boss explodes into 3 fireballs and then reforms as 3 separate dogs. This is probably the toughest part of the fight, and I think the best strategy is to try to take on each of them one by one. But when I talked to Vadi after the event, he told me he just ran away until they reformed into one body. So that might be an even better strat, even if it's boring. Either way, this is Nightreign's best example so far of a boss designed for 3 people, and I hope the rest of the Night Lords have similar co-op mechanics. And then win or lose, that's the end of the run. Okay, that's all the footage I got, but there are still a few things they didn't include footage of that I think are worth mentioning. First, you can find spectral merchants across the map. Merchants sell a variety of consumables and weapons, but given how important leveling is, we often didn't have enough room
to believe it or not, I actually think that whoever you play with, like, your team has to be really well organized, I feel like. Especially if, like, that boss, for example, at the end splits into 3 different ones. I mean, I don't know, like, the intricacies of the actual fight itself, but it is still a Souls game. So I do think that you gotta be kind of coordinated at the very least, or have some kind of plan.
Fair. Like, for example, they would sometimes sell a legendary weapon for 40,000 runes, which for this game is quite a bit. They also seem to always sell a pouch that gives you 1 extra consumable slot for the rest of the run. Next to each merchant is an anvil, which you can use to upgrade your weapons. To upgrade a weapon, you need to find a smithing stone of the corresponding rarity, and then upon using it, it levels up your weapon to the next tier. So for example, a blue weapon would turn into a purple weapon. This also means that it's technically possible to level up a white weapon all the way to orange. I don't think the weapon itself changes during this upgrade process.
Orange, I'm guessing, is the legendary of this game.
Also worth noting is that non-combat consumables like smithing stones or stone sword keys take up inventory space, so they might get in the way of all those fire bombs you want to carry. When exploring, you can find plants like rolla fruit scattered around. If we play with Venue, you're going to be dying. In Elden Ring, this is a crafting material.
True.
But that's not a thing in Nightreign. So instead, they just restore a bit of health right when you pick them up.
I don't think Venue's even touched a Souls game.
FP too. There are also mage towers just like Elden Ring. You know, the ones with the little puzzles where you gotta find the spectral turtles? Those are here too. Though when we found one, we kind of just hit the statue at the front and it opened up immediately. So it's unclear to me if there's more to unlocking them in the full game. But yeah, they have loot inside. Another thing you can sometimes find is a glowing red body on the ground, which is the location that someone else failed to run. If you interact with the body, something pops out, and I assume it corresponds with whatever weapons they had at the time they died. Sometimes you'll come across weird hazards during your runs. One time, my group found a big purple bubble floating across the sky. When we approached it, a swarm of giant ants poured out. I don't totally remember how this played out, but I think we got a mini boss reward after defeating them. You can also get invaded by bosses sometimes. This sadly didn't happen to my group, but I was talking with the others who had Margit invade them out of nowhere. What's cool about this is that can happen at inconvenient times, like when you're fighting a big group of enemies or another boss. Do you deal with it? Actually. Do you run away? Do you reposition to a better location? All of these are interesting questions that result in some fun emergent gameplay. Stuff like this has the potential to be the defining moment of a run, where things go off the rails in a fun and memorable way. In theory, this is one of my favorite features in the whole game. I could be wrong, but I don't think there's a maximum range for receiving runes from killed enemies. You can see an example of this in the first clip of the Duchess, where she receives runes from her teammates killing enemies all the way over at the fort. This is interesting to me because it leaves the door open for strategies where you might want to split up. Like, imagine splitting up and clearing 3 camps at the same time. That might be faster than doing it together.
Oh, that's a good point, actually. Do they share the loot, like the runes that you get from killing them? Because if the rune acquisition is shared, that might be an actual strategy right there. I'm not going to lie. But at the same time, you got to not be overwhelmed
But
either.
one reason not to do this is because of how shared rewards from mini-bosses work.
Okay,
Killing
well,
a
actually-
mini-boss gives each player their own reward, but only if they approach the purple soul that it leaves behind. We also
there you
found a
go.
reinforced chest, which functioned in a similar way and let each player claim a reward from it separately. Another tip, normally when you get downed, your teammates only have 15 seconds to revive you, but this timer is removed during the main nighttime boss fights. Along with this, in case it wasn't obvious, if everyone dies here, the run is over as opposed to simply losing a level. Let's go over some details from the hub area too. Just like Elden Ring, the round table hold is the hub. To begin a run, you approach the table and select the Night Lord you want to hunt. It's vaguely similar to selecting a monster to hunt in Monster Hunter. The game then immediately puts you into matchmaking to find a group to play with, but you can also use passwords just
I gotta
like
say
Elden
something
Ring
about
with
Monster Hunter.
friends.
I'll wait for
the hub
after
is
the
also
video, though.
populated by all of the playable characters, minus whatever character you're currently controlling. They all just stand around and say hello in the demo, but I'm guessing the full game will have them giving you bits of their story between runs in a similar fashion to Hades. There's also a sparring ground area and an outside area connected to the round table hold. Here you can test out every weapon in the game and set your character level from 1 to 15, which I assume is the max. This is neat, and I took advantage of this during my play session to test out how damage scaling worked. So stats like strength and dexterity are hidden. Like I genuinely couldn't find a stat screen that showed them, and you can't manually raise them when leveling up, but they do still exist and different weapons scale with different stats just like Elden Ring. To test this, I spawned in a legendary greatsword with a C scaling in strength and made my character level 15. On Wilder, the strength dex guy, a
Did they really not
two-handed
show
leg
your
attack dealt
stats on that?
348 damage.
That's
On the
kinda
Recluse,
wild if they don't.
intelligence character, it only dealt 191.
Not really sure, though.
The Duchess also dealt 191, and the Guardian dealt 299. So what this means is that even though you're free to use any weapon you find during a run, you still probably want to stick to your character's archetype, or else you'll have to deal with a damage penalty. I have mixed feelings about this, and at the very least I don't think it should be so hidden, but it is important to know so that you can be more effective during a run. The last main component of the hub is the relic altar. Here you can equip relics between runs, and each of these gives you some sort of bonus or new ability. You can equip up to 3 per character, but they're color coded, and the relic slots are color coded too. For example, one character might have 2 red slots and 1 blue slot, and that means you're only allowed to equip 2 red relics and 1 blue relic.
Is that
I believe
random,
there's
though?
3 or 4 different relic colors. What do these relics do?
Or is it
well,
set?
a lot of them are sort of boring stat bonuses, like +4 strength or extra damage with X weapon. But a few of them are actually interesting, as they can change up how you play. My favorite was the relic that enables group healing whenever you drink from your flask. This is straight out of the Elden Ring Reforged mod I played last year. I loved it then, and I love it now because it adds another layer of interactivity and synergy between players, where you're paying attention to their positioning and their health.
Honestly, in my opinion, I feel like this is a game where you really want to see a full like run before you make judgment on it. I still can't gauge how successful this is going to be. Like, I feel like it can be fun, but at the same time, what's the end goal here? Just to beat like the final boss, or what? Like, do you get anything for beating that? Is there any variety in the game modes or in the runs that you do? Like, how can I make this game have as much longevity as possible? That's essentially what I'm thinking.
That you might not have otherwise. Another fun one that's kind of similar was a relic that gave the effects of consumables you use to all nearby allies. One clutch use of this.
Because otherwise, if it's just like, you know, this straightforward and standard, I'll be honest, I don't know if I would want to pay that $40 price point. Like, I don't know if it's worth it. But I haven't actually played the game myself, so I can't make that judgment yet. But that's just my first initial impression on it.
This was using a gold pickled foul foot right before we killed the boss, that all 3 of us got extra runes. Some relics are character specific, such as the one that gives Wilder a combo attack he can use after his grapple shot that also sets his weapon on fire. Big fan of that one too. So yeah, I only got to see a few relics, but if the full game includes more of these impactful and gameplay defining cool ones, and less of the +7% to fingernail growth rate ones, I'm on board. That's about all I found in the hub, but I believe they gave hints that there would be more NPCs in the full game, such as a shop where you can buy and sell relics using a special currency earned after each run. And they also said something about being able to unlock skins for each character, which I assume are just cosmetic. Okay, that about does it for details on the content of the game. So let's talk a bit about the preview event itself that I attended in Vegas. So the event was unfortunately a shit show in which people were constantly disconnecting due to network issues. Like, truly, it was a disaster that almost stopped us from playing at all. Basically, we got split into groups of 3 and sent to tables where there would be 3 PS5s at each table. Then, like clockwork, every 5 to 15 minutes, at least one person in each group would get booted from the game.
You know,
with
honestly,
no
when
way
I
to
beat the
reconnect.
final boss,
From
that's
there,
it for me.
you'd be forced to either restart completely or push on with only 2 people, but the game kept the same difficulty intended for 3. Every single person who attended this event
Here's my
experienced these-
well, this is just a demo though, and it's a playtest, so they shouldn't have everything in the game in the playtest. There should be a lot more to it, because as it is, obviously it's not, you know, complete really. So that's why I'm really curious to see the official launch of it. But I would think that, you know, even if you beat it one time, like one playthrough, if you beat it all the way, I still feel like there's there is still probably room for replayability to do things that you weren't able to do before. But as soon as you reach a threshold where like you've done most of what the game has to offer through repeated runs or whatever the case might be, different game modes, I don't know, then at that point I would probably consider it like finished for me.
Issues. So I'll be curious to see how other attendees discuss this. I was grouped with Lobos Jr. and Ouroboros, and of the many runs we attempted, we didn't get through a single one without disconnect. We also experienced a couple desyncs where enemies would be invisible for one player while appearing normal for the other, though these only occurred after a disconnect, so it might be a non-issue under normal gameplay conditions. Despite these tech issues, I do feel like we saw pretty much everything in the demo, and we did make it to the end. So I'm doing my best to evaluate the game independently of these disconnects, and giving FromSoft the benefit of the doubt that the actual game won't have these issues. The leading theory is that the event space Wi-Fi was just kind of fucked with too many devices being on it. I'm leaning toward this being true, as the European Bandai event didn't have these issues. Regardless, I'm telling you this because I think it's important context that this is how I first experienced.
Here's another thought, food for thought, right? I don't think so, but it could be possible that they would make it somewhat of a live service game almost, where if they had continuous updates to it, I think that would actually improve the longevity of the game. But if it was live service, I would think that the pay, like the price point for it, wouldn't be $40. It would have to be probably a little bit less. But then you get into like the spiels of like, oh, you know, how the company continues to make money with like that, which I guess you could go into like, oh, you know, cosmetics, microtransactions, though in my opinion there should be 0 microtransactions in a Souls game, all that type of jazz, right? And I know like there's downsides to the live service stuff, like what I'm saying right now, but if they had continuously updated it, or if they maybe added different bosses, changed certain bosses, or did stuff like that, then at that point, I do think, you know, maybe even like change the map or something like that. I think that would be probably a possibility to increase its longevity, I think. Just off the top of the dome.
Experience the game. And it's a shame I'm forced to relay my experience to you through the lens that we scuffed event. Quite frankly, I think US Bandai messed up badly, and I'd be kind of pissed if I was FromSoft. Aside from that though, I did have fun. And while I think most people would have fun if they were in my shoes and got to play a co-op game with Lobos and Oro, I do think FromSoft has something here if I was able to find the fun even in the worst of circumstances.
Okay,
I think it's worth addressing the discourse surrounding this game. When Nightreign was first announced, there was naturally a lot of excitement, but there was also by far the most cynicism I've seen directed at a FromSoft project. And like, I obviously get it. The game is built out of recycled content from Elden Ring, you have bosses from past Souls games returning with seemingly no context, and the official messaging is calling it a, quote, survival game. That's all going to make people imagine something akin to Metal Gear Survive or Resident Evil Reverse, games that bastardize the IP in the name of chasing a market trend. It's a cash grab, it's publisher mandated, Miyazaki sold out. There were quite a few comments expressing these sentiments, and I'm sure some comments on this video will say the same thing. Again, I do get it. These claims aren't coming from nowhere, and there is of course reason to be skeptical. Now, even though I understand all of this, I'm not quite that cynical. Basically, I can appreciate that FromSoft wants to make a weird spin-off game on a smaller budget, while giving someone who's been at the company since Dark Souls 1, Junya Ishizaki, the chance at directing their own game. This is a practice that is pretty uncommon for AAA studios, and I think it's a shame because it leaves the industry with less experimentation and risk-taking in general. If every game by a large developer costs at least $100 million to make, you're gonna see most studios play it safe. Is Nightreign the best example of FromSoft taking a risk? No, not at all. This game will sell well on brand recognition alone. But the point still stands that small projects are a space for larger developers to try new things. And I do think Nightreign experiments with the Souls formula in interesting ways we'd never see from a mainline game. All that being said, I was skeptical before I even played the game. Though it wasn't coming from a place of cynicism toward the industry.
Hold on.
It instead was coming from a place of love for the action roguelike genre and wondering if Elden Ring could fit into it.
Okay, I'm gonna skip a little bit here.
It's unclear to me how much the map will change between runs.
Okay.
For this demo, as far as I could tell, it didn't change at all. We would start at one of two locations, but then that was it. All the points of interest were in the same spot, and we'd fight the same enemies and bosses. Now, of course, I do recognize that this is almost certainly just for the demo, and that the full game will meaningfully remix the map between runs, but I need to see that for myself before I vouch for this game. When I asked the Bandai representatives if they could clarify how the map would change between runs, or if there was more than one map, they were pretty cagey. They did talk about how swamps and volcanoes could drastically change things up, and the initial reveal trailer did seem to show a bit of this off.
Okay, yeah, so they're he's actually talking about what I just said, and in terms of like variety, and I think that's the next thing he's going to talk about. Build variety is also another concern, and then yeah, boss, enemy, weapon spell variety, that type of stuff too. But it's interesting because one of the most popular mods for the base game Elden Ring is a co-op mod, and I think like the experimentation of Nightreign is good, but at the same time, I feel like players put such a high expectation on it because of its brand name that I think Nightreign may be kind of like disappointing to a lot of people, or even kind of, I don't know, well, just not meeting expectations. Because like I said, the biggest out of everything, and I've said it multiple times in the video, the biggest question mark is longevity. So how do they address that? How will they address that? I'm curious to see.
But until I see it for myself, it's unclear how meaningful these changes will be. That being said, I'm reasonably optimistic, and if I had to guess, I think the map will change a lot based off which Night Lord you select before each run. The other concern I have is just the variety in builds between runs. Due to the nature of most upgrades being small passive boosts, the way you start and end each run might be a little too similar. To put it another way, you know how in a game like Hades, you get multiple gameplay defining upgrades that massively shift your build or playstyle? That part of the game is inherently less present in Nightreign. Sure, you'll find a weapon that gives plus 9% damage when two-handing, but in terms of moment-to-moment gameplay, having or not having that boost isn't going to change how you play. The same can be said about the whole leveling system. Yes, leveling up lets you deal more damage, but the way you play doesn't shift between level 1 and level 2. And as someone who's played a lot of action roguelikes, this is a notable absence. Now, to be fair, not all upgrades are like this. Stuff like the passive that gives you a lightning attack when you dodge, or the relic that gives you group healing are meaningful changes and can noticeably impact a run. So I really hope the full game has more of that. And thinking about this issue some more, we shouldn't ignore all the weapons and spells. Elden Ring might actually be a fantastic game to turn into a roguelike, if only for the variety of weapons and spells already built into the game. There are over 400 weapons and over 200 spells in Elden Ring, and the average Elden Ring player probably only used like less than 5% of them. But
all right, I'm gonna skip to his final thoughts here.
So you like the game? I thought you weren't sure. Pine, you're confusing me. Let me put it like this. As a massive fan of FromSoft, Souls-likes, and the action roguelike genre, I'm in the dead center of the Venn diagram of the potential audience for this game. I had fun playing it, and I think, at worst, this game will be a fun diversion for a couple weekends with my friends. It has a lot going for it. I think the time pressure is compelling. I appreciate all the co-op shenanigans, and I'd be lying if I said I wasn't looking forward to fighting Dark Souls 2 bosses with Elden Ring's combat. Since this demo only showed off a small part of the game, I can't be sure about everything, but the potential is there. It'll depend on how some of the systems pan out in the full release, such as how the map changes. That being said, everyone doesn't share my tastes, and the audience for this game will be more niche than Elden Ring. I think people who aren't already fans of action roguelikes might not like it at all. On top of that, I do understand the cynicism toward the amount of recycled content a game like this has. So if that's off-putting to you, I get wanting to pass on this one. Truly, I'm not going to die on any hills defending FromSoft, and I think it's reasonable to be skeptical. The game comes out on May 30th, and it'll be $40 at launch.
Dude,
It's
that's
also
crazy.
gonna
It's
launch
so
with a
soon.
$55 deluxe edition that'll come with DLC containing new playable characters, new bosses, and new map biomes. The DLC itself won't be available day one, but I think selling DLC at launch is something FromSoft hasn't done before. And while I don't personally have an issue with it, I do understand people who do. And I don't think it's a great look for FromSoft when they already have so much cynicism and distrust surrounding the game. I strongly suspect this will be a source of controversy. So yeah, Nightreign. It's a weird game, and I don't know how the general public is going to react to it. If
Yeah,
I had
that's
to
the
guess,
problem, right?
I'd say it'll be reasonably well liked, but it's probably not going to blow anyone's mind. Like I said though, I think the worst case is I get to have fun with my friends for a couple weekends. So I'm looking forward to it even with all my reservations, and I would love to have the full game surprise me in ways I won't see coming. I also think that this is the type of game that's going to be way more fun with a group of friends rather than two random people you find in matchmaking. So I suspect that'll play into people's enjoyment as well. At the very least, I think it's one to keep an eye on, and I'm extremely curious about people who never tried Elden Ring having this be their first exposure to the franchise.
Yo,
The
Venue, you
concept
should
of that
try
is
this.
hilarious to me. Anyway,
This should
thank
be
you
your
very much
first
for watching.
Souls-like
Take it
experience.
easy and look out for another video this month. Peace.
Well, there you have it. It was a good video. It was a good video. I know it could have been 10 minutes, but I did appreciate the level of detail and attention he put into the game and trying to inform the audience of everything. If anyone wants to watch it or, you know, get creds, there you go. That is his experience, I suppose, on the server, the beta test. Although I know other streamers and other people have actually already played it, and I'm not sure. I have to look at that footage myself. I haven't seen any like actual run footage of it. But yeah, just from this video alone, there's a couple things to keep in mind. It is a demo, so it's not the full game, and I can't judge it completely based off of this. That's one thing. But the other thing is that, again, I'm gonna keep going back to it. How much longevity can you get from this game? Is the map going to change very often, or how is it going to change? Are they going to add other builds in there? Because yeah, he has a point. You know, build variety that can get stale pretty quickly. Although I'll be honest, the entire genre that they're going for can get stale in general really quickly. I mean, look at Fortnite, right? What is the core game loop of Fortnite? You spawn on the battle bus, you drop down, you loot, and you try to be the last one standing in the circle. Repeat. It's the same exact core loop over and over and over again. Although I understand that, you know, what drove most people away was the updates that they had, but the base foundation of the game is there. And I feel that's exactly what they modeled this game off of, is that kind of same core loop. Even though the gameplay is different in that sense, the foundation is the same. So how long do you expect to keep playing this game? And at what point would you say, okay, I'm done, I finished this game? That's the thing. But that being said, I do think that this is a game that you probably want to wait before you buy it. Like, I think it's better to let other people buy it and play it, and you can judge based off of the actual gameplay from them before you make a decision if you want to buy it yourself. It is $40, so it's a lot cheaper than other games, but because it's $40, it's ironic because I'm not sure if it's worth the $40. That's the point. Maybe it's worth it to go on sale. Maybe. But that is my take on it. So there you have it. Elden Ring Nightreign coming on May 30th. That's something to look out for, yeah? But for stream, I'll be honest, I'm probably gonna play it and buy it, so we'll see.